The galaxy had heard stories about humanity, stories filled with disbelief and ridicule. They were called fragile, weak, and easily defeated. The aliens, coming from an advanced civilization, believed that humanity was nothing more than a blip in the vastness of the cosmos, destined to be wiped out without resistance. Their mighty fleet hovered above Earth, prepared to carry out their invasion without hesitation. The alien commanders thought that Earth's military, small and scattered, would offer no real challenge. As the ships descended, millions of eyes turned upward, watching as the alien fleet blocked out the sun. Panic spread through every corner of Earth, and most people thought the battle was already lost. Governments, military officials, and civilians alike watched in horror as alien ships, bigger and more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen, entered the atmosphere. Massive beams of energy shot down from the skies, creating chaos and destruction. Buildings crumbled, and fires raged across the cities. On the surface, humanity seemed defenseless. It was as if the aliens had made a promise to themselves. This would be their conquest, the final stamp of their superiority. The Earth's armies fought back, launching everything they had in a futile attempt to repel the invaders, but they were outmatched. Their best weapons barely made a dent in the alien ship's armor, and the enemy's advanced technology overpowered them at every turn. It was clear that humanity was on the verge of extinction, and most people accepted this reality. Governments scrambled to organize evacuations, while others braced themselves for the worst. Shelters were filled to capacity, and soldiers tried their best to organize some form of resistance. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Earth was being conquered. Humanity had no real chance of survival. Some people, however, still held on to hope, though they didn't speak it out loud. They remembered the stories, the ancient legends that spoke of human resilience, of warriors who never gave up. But those stories seemed more like myths than reality now. Yet, in the forgotten corners of Earth, in places no alien ship could scan, something was beginning to stir. Deep within the Earth's crust, hidden away from the eyes of the invaders, lay a force that had been dormant for centuries. It was an old, secret weapon, something humanity had kept hidden for times such as this. Those who knew about it were long gone, but the system that controlled it was still active. For centuries, Earth had prepared for a threat like this, although no one had known what that threat would look like. When the aliens first arrived, they brought with them a sense of superiority, believing no one could ever challenge their power. They laughed at humanity's efforts, dismissing them as nothing more than a speed bump on their path to domination. But in the very bowels of Earth, an ancient machine, a weapon so powerful it had been sealed away, was beginning to come to life. The machinery deep underground hummed faintly at first, a low, vibrating pulse that could only be felt by those who were close enough. Slowly, over days and weeks, it began to wake up. It was a war machine, a relic of the past, built long before the aliens even existed. Its creators had known that a day like this might come, and when the time arrived, it was meant to turn the tide. Above ground, however, the world continued to crumble. Alien forces made their way into cities and wiped out entire populations. The last remaining pockets of human resistance fought with everything they had. They attacked alien supply ships, tried to sabotage the invaders' communication systems, but everything seemed futile. It was a slaughter. The story of humanity's fall began to spread across the galaxy, and the alien leaders celebrated. For them, this was just another victory, another triumph in their long history of conquest. But they failed to realize that, while they were distracted with Earth's crumbling cities and fleeing humans, they had missed something crucial, a detail that could change everything. The pulse from deep within the Earth grew stronger, signaling that the machine had fully powered up. As it did, energy surged through underground cables and systems, activating dormant weapons that hadn't been touched in centuries. This machine wasn't like any weapon the aliens had ever seen. It was designed for one purpose: to fight. To fight like no other species could. To fight with a fury that would surprise even the most powerful of invaders. The first to sense something was wrong were the aliens at the front lines. They had been attacking the surface for weeks, but now, something was shifting. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, a low rumble that didn't make sense. They thought it was just an aftershock from the destruction they had caused. But it wasn't. It was the human war machine waking up, and it was getting ready to strike. Back at the Alien Command Center, the lead general sat in his chair, staring at the holographic map of Earth's surface. He watched with satisfaction as the last remaining human strongholds were being decimated. His forces were superior. Victory was certain. But then, something unexpected happened. A signal blipped on the screen, a tiny anomaly, a blip from deep within Earth. At first, they ignored it. It was just a minor interference, or so they thought. But the signal grew stronger, more frequent, and before long, the aliens realized it wasn't just a glitch. The ground beneath them was shifting in ways they couldn't understand, and the pulse coming from the planet's depths was growing stronger. Suddenly, the skies above them darkened in a way that wasn't normal. The air seemed to change. It was as if the very planet itself was preparing to fight back. And fight back, it would. The human war machine had been lying in wait, and now, it was ready to unleash its fury. The aliens who had laughed at humanity's weaknesses had no idea what was coming for them. On Earth, as the war machine rumbled to life, the first human fighters to encounter it felt a sense of awe. It was like nothing they had ever seen. The machine was massive, towering over everything. It had been hidden for so long, and now it was ready to rise up against the invaders. The Earth was not as defenseless as the aliens thought. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. And as the ground shook, they knew their victory would not be as easy as they had hoped. The real battle was just beginning. This machine, this ancient creation, was not simply a weapon. It was a testament to humanity's survival instincts. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. And now, it was time for Earth to show them just how wrong they were. As the rumbling from the deep continued, the alien forces on Earth began to sense that something had shifted. The strange signals they had dismissed earlier now became a constant, a throbbing pulse that echoed through the air. The ground vibrated beneath their boots, but they could still not place it. For weeks, they had believed that victory was assured, that humanity's fate had been sealed the moment their fleets arrived. Yet now, an unease began to creep through their ranks. On the front lines, alien commanders convened in their ships, staring at their screens, watching as their forces swept through city after city. The remaining humans, few in number, had been scattered like ants before a mighty force. Their resistance was futile. Yet, the commanders couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't the resistance. They had crushed every human stronghold, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. The humans were not as defeated as they had thought. Back underground, deep within the Earth's crust, the human war machine had come to life. It wasn't just a simple machine. It was a colossal, ancient relic, constructed with technology that far exceeded anything the aliens had ever encountered. It had been buried for centuries, left hidden by those who knew that a day like this might come. And now that day had arrived. The machine stirred as dormant circuits powered up. Massive servos groaned to life, and its vast mechanical limbs slowly began to move. From its underground base, the war machine began to rise. It had been designed for a single purpose: to protect humanity, to defend the planet at any cost. Its creators had built it with unparalleled strength and advanced weaponry, anticipating a time when the Earth might need it most. Above ground, the air grew tense as the alien forces advanced. The cityscapes were burning, and the remnants of humanity were hiding in underground bunkers. The aliens had expected the last pockets of human resistance to be quickly wiped out, but to their surprise, pockets of humanity remained. Something was holding them back, an unspoken hope, a faint glimmer of belief that they could survive. But no one knew the truth yet, not even the humans themselves. In the deep silence of an isolated military base, an old human engineer was watching the signals. He had worked on the project for decades, and even though it had been years since he had last seen the war machine, he could still feel its presence. The system's wake-up sequence had been triggered, and he could hear the low hum of power flowing through the ancient machine's circuits. For a brief moment, he closed his eyes and whispered, "It's time." He knew that the machine was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of everything humanity stood for: survival, resilience, and hope. The time had come for Earth's final defense, and he wasn't the only one who could feel it. As the machine awakened, a series of transmissions were sent out to the scattered remnants of human resistance groups. Prepare yourselves. The war machine has risen. The message echoed in every bunker, every hidden outpost. The message was clear. Humanity's final chance had arrived, and they needed to rally together. The resistance fighters, those who had fought valiantly despite knowing they were outmatched, felt a spark of hope. For the first time in weeks, they believed that victory might be possible. But they had no idea just how much they were about to witness. Back on the alien ships, the alien general stood at the helm of his flagship, staring at the Earth below. He had received reports from his scouts. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Humanity had been pushed into submission, and their last few pockets of resistance were no more than ants under his boots. Yet, there was still something he couldn't explain. A strange shift in the atmosphere, a ripple of energy that didn't make sense. He had seen humanity struggle, and he believed their fight was over. But then, something extraordinary happened. In the distance, a massive shadow loomed in the sky, a black silhouette that stretched far across the horizon. The general's eyes narrowed. It was impossible. There was no way the humans could have built anything like this, not with their limited technology. As the shadow grew closer, a shockwave of energy blasted through the alien fleet, rattling their ships. The once stable environment now seemed chaotic. Sensors scrambled as a colossal energy signature appeared, one that could not be ignored. The war machine had emerged. The humans had a secret, a weapon they had kept hidden for centuries, and now it was showing itself to the invaders. The war machine was colossal, far beyond anything the aliens had seen in their advanced galaxy-wide conquests. It moved with a mechanical precision, and its design was unlike anything the alien species could comprehend. Its weapon systems powered up, sending waves of energy through the sky. The force was overwhelming, like nothing the aliens had ever faced. For the first time since their arrival, the aliens felt fear. The human war machine, massive and unstoppable, was coming for them. The general's voice was a low growl as he turned to his commanders. Prepare for battle. This isn't just a machine. This is something much worse. The aliens had underestimated humanity. They had thought their technology superior, their strength unmatched. But now, as the human war machine powered through the atmosphere, breaking apart alien defenses in its path, they realized their mistake. This was no ordinary human. This was something much more, something that even the greatest alien minds hadn't predicted. The human war machine moved with a sense of purpose, its weapons unleashing a barrage of power that struck down alien ships in mid-flight. It wasn't just about destroying the invaders. It was about showing the galaxy what humanity was capable of. This was the moment the aliens would remember for the rest of their existence. The day they learned what happened when they underestimated the strength of humanity. As the machine advanced, more and more alien ships were obliterated. Their high-tech weapons barely scratched the surface of the human machine's defenses. And in the midst of this chaos, humanity's last hope fought on, reminding the invaders that Earth was not as helpless as they had thought. And so, the battle began. The human war machine was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol of resistance, of humanity's refusal to be crushed. The aliens had thought they were the apex of power in the galaxy. But now, they would learn that the human spirit, fueled by survival and hope, was far stronger than they could have ever imagined. The battle raged on as the human war machine tore through the alien fleet. Above Earth, the sky was alive with the chaos of combat, explosions echoing in every direction as alien ships crumbled under the force of the war machine's assault. The once confident alien commanders now found themselves scrambling to regroup, their advanced technology proving useless against a power they hadn't anticipated. The war machine's movements were precise, its massive limbs crushing alien ships with mechanical efficiency. Its weapons discharged energy beams that cut through alien hulls like they were paper, sending debris raining down onto the Earth below. The humans, watching from their underground bunkers, could only stare in awe at the sight above them. For so long, they had been pushed into hiding, forced to fight in the shadows, but now, they were seeing the impossible. Humanity had a weapon capable of turning the tide of war. The alien forces, which had been so confident in their superiority, were now reeling. Their ships, though technologically advanced, had been built to fight weaker species that cowered before their might. But the human war machine was different. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of nature. Every blast from its cannons, every movement it made, sent a clear message to the invaders. Humanity was not done yet. The alien general, watching from his flagship, could barely contain his disbelief. His ships were being torn apart faster than he could send reinforcements. His fleet had been built to fight entire civilizations, yet here they were, being overrun by one human creation. He slammed his fist against the console in front of him, his face twisted with frustration and rage. This can't be happening. How did they hide this from us? How did they keep it hidden for so long? He turned to his most trusted lieutenant, his voice low and filled with anger. Send everything we've got at it. I don't care what it takes. We must destroy that machine, or this entire invasion will fall apart. The lieutenant nodded, quickly issuing commands to the fleet. But the general's words were hollow, even to him. He knew the truth deep down. Nothing they had could stop the war machine. They were dealing with something far more powerful than they had ever expected. On the surface of Earth, the remnants of the human resistance began to rally. The message had gone out, the war machine has risen, and with it came a new sense of purpose. The once scattered and defeated forces, those who had hidden in bunkers and underground shelters, now emerged with renewed hope. They joined forces with the war machine, using their knowledge of the alien technology they had salvaged over the years to help guide the machine's attacks. Every human fighter, every soldier who had once thought they were fighting a losing battle, now saw the war in a new light. In the command centers deep below Earth's surface, engineers and military strategists worked tirelessly, coordinating with the war machine, making sure it was as effective as possible. They sent commands to the machine's systems, adjusting tactics, and ensuring that every move it made was calculated for maximum destruction. But even as they worked, they knew one thing for sure: this machine, this unstoppable force, was the key to Earth's survival. As the battle continued, the war machine pushed forward, its massive bulk carving a path through the alien fleet. The aliens were losing ground rapidly, their ships retreating in disarray. It was an unprecedented sight. The invaders, the once feared alien fleet, were running from a single human weapon. But the alien general, refusing to admit defeat, issued one final order. Prepare the doomsday weapon. If we can't win this battle, we'll ensure Earth doesn't survive it. The doomsday weapon was a last-ditch effort, a massive energy cannon capable of obliterating entire planets. It was a desperate measure, one the aliens had been saving for only the most dire situations. The general knew that if he couldn't win the war, at least he could erase Earth from existence, wiping out everything in a single, devastating blow. The weapon powered up, its enormous energy core humbling even the most powerful of Earth's weapons. The general grinned to himself, thinking he had found a way to bring this nightmare to an end. But as the weapon charged, he could feel something he hadn't anticipated. The war machine was moving faster, more precisely than before. It had detected the energy buildup and was heading straight for the alien flagship. On the ground, humans were starting to notice the shift in the skies. The war machine was heading toward the alien flagship, its movements growing more determined, its weapons locked on target. Those who had been watching the war from the safety of their shelters saw a glimmer of hope. It's going for the flagship, one soldier muttered to another. If it can take down the general's ship, we might have a chance. But time was running out. The doomsday weapon was nearly fully charged, and the war machine was still far from the alien flagship. The tension in the air was palpable. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. Inside the war machine, the control room hummed with activity as humans adjusted the final settings for the attack. The lead engineer, eyes locked onto the holographic map in front of him, took a deep breath. We're almost there. We need to push faster. He turned to the commander who stood beside him. If we don't stop that doomsday weapon, it's all over. We have one shot at this. The commander nodded. We're ready. Let's give them everything we've got. The war machine surged forward, its massive legs stomping across the battlefield with crushing force. It moved faster than ever, its weapon systems locking onto the alien flagship. The alien general, watching from his command deck, cursed under his breath. Fire the weapon now. But it was too late. The war machine fired first, sending a blast of energy that collided with the alien flagship. The massive ship, once thought invincible, was torn apart in an instant. Explosions rippled through the alien fleet as the flagship disintegrated, taking the doomsday weapon with it. The sky above Earth fell silent for a moment, before a deafening cheer erupted from the humans below. The alien general's ship was destroyed, and with it, the threat of annihilation was lifted. The human war machine had done the impossible. It had not only repelled the invasion but had destroyed the alien fleet's last hope for Earth's destruction. The alien forces, now leaderless and broken, began to retreat, their ships fleeing into space. The battle was over, and humanity had won. But the war machine's power had proven something far greater. It had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had fought back, and they had triumphed. And in the heart of Earth, the war machine's systems powered down, its mission complete. For now, Earth was safe. But humanity would never forget what they had learned. When pushed to the brink, they were capable of unimaginable strength. And as the last alien ship disappeared into the void, one thing was clear. Humanity had proven its place in the galaxy. The war machine's victory echoed across Earth, and for the first time in weeks, the humans who had survived could breathe. The skies, once dark with the looming shadow of alien ships, were now clear. The ground that had trembled beneath the alien bombardments was still. Earth had been saved. The war machine, now standing victorious among the smoldering wreckage of alien vessels, had done the impossible. It had turned the tide of a war that humanity had been losing since the moment the alien fleets arrived. But the victory was bittersweet. As the last of the alien ships fled into the depths of space, the reality of the situation began to settle in. The war machine, humanity's ultimate weapon, had achieved what seemed impossible, but it was also a reminder of how much had been lost. Cities lay in ruins, landscapes had been ravaged, and many lives had been sacrificed. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would take generations to heal. In the aftermath, the surviving humans slowly emerged from their shelters and bunkers. Many still couldn't believe what they had witnessed. For so long, they had been living in the shadow of fear, certain that their civilization was doomed. But the war machine's rise had given them hope, a hope they hadn't even realized was still alive inside them. Back in the command center, where the war machine's systems were being shut down, the engineers who had worked tirelessly to control the massive machine stood together in silence. They had all seen what it was capable of, and they knew the risks of leaving it unattended. For years, the war machine had been dormant, locked away in the depths of Earth's core. They had no idea who had created it, or why, but it had been humanity's last line of defense, and it had delivered. The engineers couldn't help but wonder. Would they ever need it again? Could they ever build something like it again? The chief engineer, an elderly man with a lifetime of experience, sat at the control console, deep in thought. "We've won," he muttered to himself, as if trying to reassure his own mind. But at what cost? One of his younger colleagues, a woman who had been working alongside him for the past few months, turned to him. "What do you mean?" He looked at her, his eyes tired yet full of resolve. "This machine. It's not just a weapon. It's a symbol of everything we were willing to sacrifice. The moment we woke it up, we chose survival at all costs. But now, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to rely on this, or can we rebuild on our own terms? We don't know who built it, or if there are more like it hidden on this planet. But if we keep relying on it, will we ever truly be free?" The woman nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. "We've already rebuilt once. We'll do it again. We'll make sure humanity stands strong without the need for machines like this." The chief engineer paused for a long moment, then nodded in agreement. "We will. But we'll also make sure we never forget the lesson we've learned today. Humanity's strength isn't in its weapons, but in its will to survive, its ability to fight back, and its refusal to bow down. No matter what, we will rise again. Meanwhile, the world's leaders gathered in what remained of Earth's capital cities, attempting to restore order and begin the process of rebuilding. The war had taken a heavy toll on the human race, and now it was time to heal. But there was one thing they knew for sure: the world would never be the same. The survivors who had fought alongside the war machine felt an overwhelming sense of pride. They were part of something that had changed the course of history, something that would be remembered for centuries to come. But even as they celebrated their victory, they couldn't ignore the reality of the damage. Entire cities had been destroyed. Communities were fractured, and the global economy was in ruins. It wasn't just a military victory. They had to rebuild a broken world. The war machine's creators, whoever they were, had given humanity a gift, a weapon capable of fighting off the most powerful alien fleet ever encountered. But that gift came with a heavy burden. It reminded humanity of the lengths it would go to protect its own. And it also reminded them of the fragile nature of peace. The war machine, now silent, stood as a monument to both their darkest fears and their greatest triumphs. The alien fleets were gone, but the galaxy had witnessed humanity's true power. They had proven they could fight back when cornered, that they could push through the darkest of times and come out victorious. But there was still so much to do. The battle might have been won, but the war to rebuild had only just begun. As the war machine powered down, its massive form standing in the quiet aftermath of battle, a new sense of purpose began to stir in the hearts of the survivors. They had seen what they were capable of, and they had tasted victory. They knew they could face whatever came next. The alien invaders had underestimated them, but now, humanity stood tall, its resolve unbroken. It was time to rebuild, not just their cities, but their hope, their unity, and their future. But one thing was clear: humanity had learned an invaluable lesson. Strength didn't lie in the machines they built, but in their unity. The war machine had shown them the incredible power of their species when pushed to the brink, but it was up to them to ensure that they would never need it again. The alien fleets had been defeated, but humanity's true battle had only just begun. The victory over the alien invaders was still fresh in the minds of the survivors, and for the first time in a long while, hope began to replace fear. As the world slowly returned to a fragile peace, the human race found itself at a crossroads. The war had left Earth in ruins, but it had also ignited something deep within humanity: the realization that they were capable of far more than they had ever believed. Across the globe, survivors began the daunting task of rebuilding their cities, their economies, and their lives. The alien threat was no longer hanging over them, but the scars of war remained. The once thriving metropolises were now skeletal remnants of their former selves. Buildings lay in ruin, streets were torn apart, and entire regions were abandoned as alien forces had swept through without mercy. But amid the rubble, humanity's resolve was unwavering. People worked together, not just to restore what was lost, but to create something better, something stronger. They had fought alongside the war machine, witnessed the power of human ingenuity and resilience, and now they were determined to forge a new path, one where Earth's people stood united, stronger than ever before. As the months passed, new governments formed, taking what remained of Earth's leadership and reworking it to reflect the unity that had emerged. The war machine, once a terrifying force of destruction, now stood as a monument to humanity's survival, a reminder of what they could accomplish when they came together. But as the world worked to recover, the question remained: could they rebuild their society without relying on the weapons of the past? Would they still need the war machine? The answer was complicated. The war machine had done what no other force could. It had defeated the alien fleets, saved Earth from complete annihilation, and proven that humanity was capable of defending itself. But as its enormous frame stood silent in the open plains, the question lingered: how long before someone would want to use it again? How long before the desire for power and security would make them turn to such a weapon once more? Inside the command center that had overseen the war machine's activation, the engineers continued their work, but now it was a different kind of task. They were no longer preparing for battle. They were working to understand the full scope of the machine's capabilities. Who had built it? And why? These questions haunted them, especially now that Earth had won the war and they no longer needed the weapon. "We've seen what this machine is capable of," one engineer said, his voice laced with both awe and trepidation. "But can we control it? Can we keep it from becoming a tool of destruction once more?" His colleague, a younger engineer, shook her head. "We have no choice but to try. We can't just shut it down and forget it. It's a part of our history now. But we need to understand it, control it, make sure it's used only when absolutely necessary. We can't risk repeating the past." Their work continued, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. The war machine was too powerful, too dangerous to be left unchecked. Yet, leaving it inactive meant allowing the possibility of future threats. The machine had been humanity's savior, but now, it seemed like a double-edged sword. How could they ensure it wouldn't become a curse, a weapon that could be used by those who desired to dominate rather than defend? Across the world, people were grappling with similar questions. The human spirit had been tested to its limits, and they had triumphed. But what came next? What kind of world would emerge from the ashes of the old one? The war had left deep scars, not just on the landscape, but in the hearts and minds of those who had survived. The fear of another invasion, the memory of cities in flames, and the sheer devastation they had witnessed haunted them all. How could they rebuild their lives without the threat of it all happening again? Some advocated for keeping the war machine as humanity's safeguard, a reminder that Earth would never again be caught off guard. They saw it as a symbol of their strength and their willingness to protect their home at any cost. Others, however, feared the very thing that had saved them. The war machine represented power, yes, but it also represented the destructive potential of unchecked violence. If humanity could create such a force once, what would stop them from creating more, or worse, using it in the wrong hands? The debate was heated, with leaders and citizens alike arguing over the future of the machine. Some wanted it destroyed, removed from existence entirely, while others called for it to be used as a deterrent, a last line of defense in case of future threats. The war machine, a tool of survival, had become a symbol of both hope and fear. Meanwhile, the alien race that had once thought of humanity as weak and defenseless was now gone. Earth had been saved, but the war had left humanity with an unexpected gift, the knowledge that they were capable of far more than they had ever realized. The survivors of the invasion no longer saw themselves as powerless. The war had sparked something in them, a fire that could never be extinguished. And so, as Earth began to rebuild, humanity faced a new kind of war. The battle wasn't against alien invaders, but against themselves. They had to decide what kind of future they wanted. Would they rely on the weapons of the past, or would they create a new world, one where peace was built not on fear and power, but on cooperation and understanding? In the midst of this uncertain future, the war machine remained, a monument to human strength and resilience, but also a reminder of the cost of survival. Humanity had proven it could face the worst and emerge victorious, but the true test would be in how they used that victory to shape the future. As the last of the alien ships drifted into the void, humanity realized that their fight was not over. They had faced a great evil, and now, they would face the challenge of building a lasting peace. Would they remain a people defined by their wars, or would they rise above the darkness, creating a new era of unity and hope? The answers lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, humanity had a chance. The war machine's legacy would live on, not just as a weapon, but as a reminder that survival was only the beginning. The real battle was how they would choose to move forward as Earth slowly began to rebuild. The scars of war remained, both on the landscape and within the hearts of its people. The war machine, once humanity's last hope, now stood silent, a massive monument to the desperate struggle for survival. Its purpose had been fulfilled, but its presence remained a constant reminder of the destructive power humanity was capable of wielding. It had saved them once, but could it be trusted again? In the quiet aftermath, humanity faced its most difficult challenge yet, not just rebuilding cities and economies, but rebuilding trust. The war had united them against a common enemy, but now that the invaders were gone, old divisions began to resurface. Political leaders scrambled to re-establish order, But without a clear vision for the future, many feared that the fragile peace would crumble under its own weight. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there were those who saw the rebuilding process as an opportunity to create something better. A new world, one built on the lessons learned from the war. In the heart of Earth's major cities, survivors gathered, determined to rebuild not just their homes, but the very foundations of society. They understood that the war machine could never be the answer. The future would have to be different. The engineers who had once worked on the war machine were now at the forefront of the effort to turn the machine's power into something peaceful, something that could help the world rebuild. They spent countless hours studying the technology, trying to unlock its secrets without the danger of war. They understood that they couldn't destroy it. It was too valuable, a key to the survival of humanity if another threat ever emerged. But could it be repurposed for peace? Could humanity, with all its flaws and strengths, find a way to use such power without abusing it? The answer, they quickly realized, was not simple. The war machine had been built for destruction. Its purpose had always been to fight, to defend humanity by any means necessary. Repurposing it for peaceful purposes was a challenge unlike anything they had ever faced. They needed to ensure that this weapon, this symbol of humanity's survival, would never again become a tool of oppression or domination. It would be a long road, filled with uncertainty, but they were determined to try. Meanwhile, the leaders of the newly formed governments began to debate the future of the war machine. Some called for its immediate destruction, fearing that its mere existence could lead humanity down the path of tyranny. Others saw it as a necessary safeguard, a last line of defense in case the galaxy's threats ever returned. The debate was heated, with no easy answers. But beyond the political squabbles, ordinary people began to come together to rebuild their lives. The destruction had been vast, but the human spirit was more resilient than the alien invaders had ever imagined. Communities that had once been shattered by fear and uncertainty began to reform, and people who had lost everything started to find hope again. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to create something new, something better. In one small town, survivors gathered to help rebuild their homes. A group of farmers, who had seen their crops burned and fields destroyed, started to plant new seeds in the rich, fertile soil that had once been scorched by alien energy blasts. The soil was still damaged, but the crops began to grow once again. It was a symbol of the world's resilience. The earth could be broken, but it could heal. And so could humanity. But even as the seeds of hope began to sprout, there were still lingering fears. Humanity's relationship with its own power had changed. The war machine had proven that they could fight back against the most advanced alien fleet in the galaxy. But it had also shown them how easily they could destroy themselves, how quickly the desire for control and power could turn something meant to protect into something that could annihilate. There were those who believed the war machine should be destroyed, but they were not in the majority. The majority of humanity recognized the power they now held, and they understood the responsibility that came with it. This was not just about survival. It was about understanding their place in the universe. They had shown the aliens that humanity could defend itself, but now, they needed to prove that they could do more than just survive. They needed to show the galaxy that they could thrive. As time passed, the war machine remained dormant, its vast form a constant reminder of what humanity had endured. But its presence, too, became a part of the world's rebuilding process. It was no longer just a weapon. It had become a symbol of survival, of humanity's ability to rise from the ashes. It was a lesson, a warning to the future. And slowly, the idea of using the war machine for peaceful purposes began to take shape. Its technology, its strength, could be used to rebuild. It was not just a tool for destruction. It could be a tool for creation. The engineers worked tirelessly to adapt its systems, using its immense power to restore what had been lost. The war machine became a symbol not only of the human will to survive, but also of their desire to create, to build something better. The war was over, but the true test of humanity's strength was just beginning. They had faced the darkness, and they had survived. But could they rebuild without repeating the mistakes of the past? Could they use their newfound power responsibly, not just to defend their world, but to create a new one of peace and prosperity? The future was uncertain, But for the first time, humanity faced it with hope. The war machine was no longer a symbol of fear. It had become a beacon of possibility. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it would fight for its survival. But now it had to prove that it could thrive without war, without violence. It would be a long journey, but one thing was clear. Humanity had learned a lesson, and they would never forget it. The alien invaders had been defeated. Earth was safe. But humanity's true battle was just beginning. And the first step toward winning that battle was to rebuild, not just their world, but their very understanding of what it meant to be human. The dust had settled, the skies had cleared, and the alien fleet had long since retreated into the dark expanse of space. Earth's people stood at a precipice. A new era was unfolding before them, but the uncertainty of the future loomed larger than ever. The war machine that had once been the planet's final hope was now at the center of an even greater struggle. The fight for humanity's soul. While the physical reconstruction of Earth continued at an impressive pace, the deeper, more complex task of healing humanity's fractured spirit had only just begun. In every corner of the globe, survivors grappled with the trauma of the invasion, the destruction they had witnessed, and the lives they had lost. But there was something else on their minds, something that had begun to overshadow everything else: the war machine. It was an undeniable fact that humanity had won. But how had they won? With a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of obliterating entire alien fleets. And now, with the dust of war behind them, humanity had to ask itself a critical question. What now? As the war machine stood dormant, its towering form casting a long shadow over Earth's new cities, the world's leaders convened in a tense summit. They knew they had to make a decision, one that would shape the fate of their civilization. Some argued for destroying the war machine, fearing that the power it represented could tempt humanity to once again rely on brute force instead of diplomacy and cooperation. Others argued that it was too valuable to destroy, a symbol of human strength and survival, one that might be needed again should another threat arise. The debate was fierce, and the stakes were high. But amid the political squabbles, a quiet movement was growing, a movement that believed the answer lay not in destruction, but in reformation. In a small town nestled in the hills, an engineer named Lucas had been working alone for months. He was one of the few who had worked directly with the war machine during the battle, helping to coordinate the massive machine's movements and weapon systems. But since the war had ended, Lucas had become increasingly disturbed by what he had witnessed: the sheer power of the war machine and the devastation it had caused. He couldn't shake the thought that humanity had narrowly avoided becoming the very thing they had fought against: conquerors. And now, they had this weapon, a weapon that could easily turn against them. But Lucas didn't believe the answer was to destroy the war machine. He believed the answer lay in repurposing it, transforming the very symbol of destruction into a force for creation. His idea was simple yet audacious: use the war machine's immense power and advanced technology to rebuild, to reshape the world, to bring about a new era of peace and prosperity. Lucas worked tirelessly on his plan, designing new systems that would harness the war machine's energy not for destruction, but for growth. He proposed using its massive energy sources to power entire cities, to irrigate crops in barren regions, to create clean water, and to provide sustainable energy. The machine could be repurposed as a tool for construction, not destruction. It could create, rather than tear down. It could help Earth recover from the war, rather than serve as a constant reminder of what had been lost. Lucas knew that his plan would face resistance. The war machine had been a weapon, and that's how many people saw it. But he also knew that if humanity was going to build a future worthy of their survival, they needed to think differently. The war machine could be a symbol of human ingenuity, not just of humanity's capacity for violence. It could embody humanity's ability to adapt and evolve, to turn tragedy into hope. And so, Lucas reached out to others: engineers, scientists, political leaders, and thinkers who had seen the potential of the war machine in a new light. Together, they began to build a coalition, a group of people dedicated to ensuring that the war machine would never again be used as a weapon of war. Instead, they would harness its power to help rebuild Earth, to create a better world, to show the galaxy that humanity was not defined by war, but by its capacity for growth and compassion. But the path forward was not easy. Opposition mounted, as many believed that tampering with the war machine systems could trigger a catastrophic failure. There were those who feared the unknowns, the immense power that the war machine wielded, and the potential consequences of unleashing that power in ways that had never been tested. The debates continued, fierce and unyielding. Some saw Lucas' vision as naive, others as dangerous. But Lucas refused to back down. He believed in the power of human creativity and resilience. In the weeks that followed, tensions reached a breaking point. The political leaders, caught between the desire to use the war machine and the fear of its potential, found themselves locked in a stalemate. The world watched, waiting for a decision. But as the weeks turned into months, Lucas and his coalition continued to work behind the scenes, preparing the war machine for its new role. They knew that time was running out, that the longer they waited, the more likely the war machine would be destroyed by those who feared its power. Then, the unexpected happened. In a remote part of Earth, a new threat emerged, a rogue faction of alien survivors who had escaped the initial invasion. They had been waiting for the right moment to strike, biding their time in the outer reaches of space. They had seen what humanity had done to the invading fleet, and they knew they couldn't let humanity grow too powerful. A new war was about to begin, one that would test humanity's resolve once again. The alien faction, smaller but no less dangerous, launched a surprise attack on Earth, striking before humanity could fully recover. Their fleet was formidable, but they had underestimated something: the war machine. As the alien ships descended on Earth's atmosphere, Lucas' coalition watched in awe as the dormant war machine stirred to life once again. This time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about humanity's future. The war machine powered up, its massive engines roaring to life. The enormous weapon systems, once designed for destruction, now began to deploy in new ways. Rather than fire destructive energy blasts, they unleashed waves of energy that disabled the alien ships, rendering them powerless without causing devastation to the Earth below. Humanity's new path was clear. The war machine had been reformed, repurposed, and now it would defend Earth, not by annihilating, but by neutralizing any threat. The rogue alien faction was driven back, their forces retreating into the void of space. And in that moment, humanity realized something profound. They had not just survived, they had evolved. The war machine had shown them that they were capable of far more than brute strength. They had learned to adapt, to rebuild, and to create something lasting. The victory was bittersweet. The alien invaders had been defeated, but humanity's true battle was just beginning. The war machine would no longer be a symbol of destruction, but of resilience, of humanity's ability to turn the tide of war into an opportunity for growth. As the war machine powered down once again, Lucas stood before it, knowing that they had made the right choice. Humanity had taken control of its own future, and they would never forget the lessons they had learned in the fires of war. The road to peace was long, but the first step had been taken. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger, not through force, but through unity and ingenuity. The galaxy would remember Earth's story, not just as a tale of survival, but as a testament to the power of humanity's will to create, to grow, and to rise above its past as the echoes of battle faded and the last of the alien ships disappeared into the depths of space. A deep silence fell over Earth. The war machine, now a dormant relic of the past, stood tall against the clear sky. The scars left by the alien invaders were still visible, etched into the Earth's surface: ruined cities, broken infrastructure, and the hollowed-out hearts of survivors who had faced the unthinkable. Yet, amid the remnants of destruction, there was something undeniably hopeful in the air. Humanity had survived, and in the process, they had learned something invaluable. True strength wasn't found in war machines, but in unity and resilience. The weeks following the victory were filled with both celebration and mourning. Survivors came together to rebuild, their hands working to restore what had been broken, piece by piece. But the task ahead was not just about restoring what had been lost. It was about creating something new. Earth had been tested like never before, and its people had proven their indomitable spirit. But now came the real challenge. How would they shape their future? Would they repeat the mistakes of the past, or would they forge a new path, one that would ensure they would never again face such destruction? The war machine's towering form still loomed over the planet, a constant reminder of both humanity's potential and its capacity for destruction. It had been humanity's last hope, the ultimate weapon they had used to defeat the invaders. But what now? The war was over. The aliens had been driven away. And now, humanity was left with the question of what to do with the one thing that had secured their survival. Political leaders around the world convened in secret, debating the future of the war machine. Some argued for its immediate destruction, fearful of what it represented. Too much power concentrated in one place, too much temptation for future leaders to misuse it. They remembered how close humanity had come to destruction, and they feared the possibility of repeating the cycle. They argued that a weapon like this could never again be allowed to roam free. Others, however, saw the war machine as an essential tool for Earth's defense, a symbol of human resilience, an insurance policy against future threats. The debate raged on, but no resolution was in sight. The world remained divided. But amidst the political turmoil, there were others who saw the war machine differently. People like Lucas, the engineer who had once worked alongside it. Lucas had witnessed firsthand the machine's terrifying power, but he had also seen its potential for good. He was determined to prove that humanity could take what had been meant for destruction and turn it into something that would help rebuild Earth, rather than destroy it. Lucas's idea was simple, but audacious. He wanted to repurpose the war machine, to transform it from a symbol of destruction into a force for creation. It wasn't just about stopping future threats. It was about using its immense power to help rebuild the planet. The war machine's energy systems could be harnessed to provide clean energy for the planet's cities. Its advanced technology could be used to help restore ecosystems, reforest the lands that had been ravaged during the invasion, and even create sustainable farming systems that could feed the world's hungry. In Lucas's vision, the war machine would become a tool of healing, not destruction. Of course, there were those who opposed Lucas's plan. The very idea of repurposing the war machine seemed reckless to many, especially given its history. They argued that even if it was repurposed for peaceful purposes, its mere existence would always be a reminder of humanity's capacity for violence. What would stop future leaders from turning it into a weapon again? What would stop humanity from relying on it instead of creating sustainable, peaceful solutions for the future? Lucas knew the stakes were high, but he believed the alternative was far worse. If humanity destroyed the war machine, it would be giving up on the very lessons they had learned from the invasion. They had survived not just because of their weapons, but because of their unity and resolve. The war machine was a symbol of that resolve, a testament to humanity's ability to adapt and fight back when all seemed lost. To destroy it would be to forget everything they had fought for. It wasn't long before Lucas's idea began to gain traction. Slowly, a group of like-minded individuals, engineers, scientists, and political leaders, began to rally behind him. Together, they formed a coalition, one dedicated to reworking the war machine's technology into something that would serve humanity's needs, rather than its desire for power. They knew it wouldn't be easy, and they knew they would face opposition. But they also knew that the future of humanity was at stake. And so, the work began. The coalition began the slow and careful process of dismantling the war machine's most destructive components, replacing them with new systems designed for healing and rebuilding. The energy cores that had once powered weapons now powered cities. The advanced algorithms used for targeting enemy ships were repurposed to optimize global communication networks. The enormous, towering limbs that had once crushed alien vessels were now being fitted with precision tools for construction and repair. It was an arduous process, one that required the combined efforts of the brightest minds from every corner of the globe. But as the weeks passed, the results began to show. The war machine, once a symbol of humanity's darkest hour, was slowly transforming into a force for good. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a lifeline, a tool that could help heal the planet, repair the damage done by the war, and ensure a future where humanity could thrive, not through conquest, but through cooperation. But even as the transformation took shape, not everyone was convinced. There were still those who saw the war machine as too dangerous, too unpredictable. The machine's existence remained a point of contention, and the coalition's efforts were constantly challenged by those who feared the power it represented. Would humanity ever be able to truly put its past behind it? Would the war machine's legacy forever haunt them, no matter how much good it did? And then, just as the war machine was nearing completion, a new threat emerged, a distant signal, one that came from beyond the stars. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakably alien. A new fleet, not the same as the one they had fought off, but one far more advanced. It was too early to tell if it was a threat or a mere probe, but the message was clear. The galaxy had taken notice of Earth's victory, and Earth's next challenge might just be starting. The war machine had been repurposed to rebuild, to protect, to create a future of peace. But in the vastness of space, humanity's story was only beginning. As Earth stood at the threshold of a new era, they realized something profound. Their survival depended not just on the power of their machines, but on their willingness to work together, to learn from their past, and to build a future worthy of their struggle. The war machine was ready, but so was humanity. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But the real test had just begun. How would they rise to meet the challenges of the future, knowing that their greatest weapon was also their greatest responsibility? Would they prove that they could build not just a world, but a legacy, one of peace, unity, and hope? Or would they fall back into the mistakes of the past, repeating the cycle of destruction they had once escaped? The answers, as always, lay ahead, in the stars.